Summer in the garden is full of bright colours, tall blooms and rich scents. But by the time August rolls around, things can start to look a little bit tired. The dry spring and summer we've had here in the UK hasn't helped. Flowers have faded, stems are flopping, and some plants just aren't looking their best.
Luckily, it doesn't take much to bring them back to life. With a bit of careful pruning and deadheading, you can perk your garden right up and have a rainbow of colour right into autumn. All we need is a good clean pair of secateurs, a little bit of courage, and we're well on our way. Pruning in August might feel a little ruthless when the garden is still full of colour, but it's one of the best things you can do to keep your garden looking nice and fresh. By now, many perennials, shrubs and annuals have already given their first big show of flowers, and if left alone, they'll put all their energy into producing seeds. But for us, it often means that flowering slows right down or stops altogether. Some seed heads do look beautiful when left over winter, but right now we want more flowers. By stepping in now with a good pruning or deadhead, you send that energy back into producing fresh shoots and flowers while keeping the plant's shape neat and compact. Midsummer pruning also prevents plants from becoming leggy and your beds looking wild, keeping the whole garden looking well kept and full of colour for the rest of the season.
So if you've grown lavender before, you might have found that it looks absolutely fabulous one year and then the next year it looks a bit straggly. Certainly a problem that we've had in the past, and it's basically because we haven't pruned it, so we haven't looked after it. So today I'm going to cut back this lavender here. I know it's ready to have a good cut back because the flowers, they were a very rich purple, and now you can see they're kind of a greyish purple, quite faded. And to do this, I'm going to cut back down to the bottom of any green growth. I don't want to cut too low, and it's really important that you don't cut too low, because if you cut too low, you'll cut into the woody bit and new growth won't come from there. So I'm going to get my pruning shears out here, and I'm just going to start snipping into a kind of dome shape. You can see some new growth coming through, so it'll be roughly the same height as that new growth. So by doing this, I might get a second flush of flowers this year, hopefully, but it'll improve the overall health of the plant and make sure that we get some healthy growth next year and stop it looking like a mess next year. And I think that is about it.
So we've got our shrub rose here, lovely pink plants with lots of delicate little flowers. And the aim of the game with a rose like this is to get it continue flowering all summer long. And to do that, we need to deadhead it. If you leave spent flowers on the stem, then they'll want to go to seed, and that's when the flowers slow down. For a cluster like that, you can see that there's a mixture of fresh flowers, these pink ones. There's blooms on here that are waiting to open up, and then there's also spent ones. So to tidy this up, we can cut out the spent flowers. Now it's tempting to go in and just pick it off with your fingers, like so, whoops, and remove some of the petals. Do that, but if you don't cut it all the way back, then you end up with a piece of stem on the plant still that tends to die back and leave an ugly brown stem. So it's better, it's a bit more delicate as well, if you go in with your snippers and just go through and cut off the spent flowers at the base. Oops, I accidentally cut off a viable one there, but never mind. There are lots on here that will continue to grow, unopened blooms. So there's one there. Just go in at the base and just cut it off like so. Eventually though, you'll get to a point where the whole cluster is looking a little bit tired. So in which case you can go in and cut the whole thing off. Normally with a rose, you follow it down the stem to the next set of 5 leaves. Doesn't seem to apply too much in this case, a bit of a different shrub type rose. But you can follow it down to where it meets the stem and just cut it off entirely like so. So they're all spent flowers. So as soon as they start to turn like that, that's when I cut them off. So I'm going to go through and give this plant a good tidy up. Okay, I think that is tidy. If I saw any yellowing or browning leaves, I cut those off as well, because roses, as we know, tend to suffer with black spots, so I don't want that to spread across the plant. But I think that looks a lot tidier than it did 5 or 10 minutes ago.
So these plants are both astilbes, and what's great about astilbes is you get bright colour in a shady area. They're shade lovers. I pruned both of these about a month ago, and as you can see, this one, the pink one, has given us a new flush of flowers. So I took the dead flowers off and gave the leaves a good cut back. And on this one, I probably didn't take enough of the foliage off, which is why we've not got a second flush of flowers. There's a tiny bit of growth, but it's obviously not looking as vibrant as this one. So I'm going to try taking a little bit more of the foliage off now and see if we can get some more flowers.
Salvias are a plant, it's a perennial plant that really does benefit from a good prune. So me and Mrs. Sheffield have just been having a bit of an argument about this. She wants to go quite high on the plant, but I like to go a little bit deeper. So I reckon, so obviously these flower spikes are pretty much all gone, they're all pretty much spent. So I like to follow it down to a set of leaves on the stem and cut it off there, like so. Mr. Sheffield wanted to go to that point and cut it off there, but I think that's a bit too high because you're leaving these two leggy stems here. Isn't that right, Mrs. Sheffield? So I'm going to go through, just cut these back.
Let us know in the comments who's right.
Cut these back to a lower point on the stem. So rather than faffing around trying to cut all these off individually, I just went a bit lower down and cut it to a nice healthy set of leaves, and hopefully it should produce new branches, new sets of leaves, and maybe a new set of flowers before the end of the year. Easy as that.
This is a cosmos. It's an annual that has very feathery, fine foliage and daisy-like flowers. We get a lot of flowers throughout the summer, but they don't last very long, so they do need deadheading to keep it flowering into autumn. And to do this, we're just going to take the spent flowers right down to the healthy green leaves, and that's going to encourage branching and more flowers. Okay, so I'm going to start over here. You can see that someone, I think Mr. Sheffield, has just pulled these off and it's left this rather ugly stem. So I'm going to snip right down to the leaves there. Not too much of a big job on there, that's all done. And I'd recommend you do this quite regularly, every maybe even every day, very regularly in the summer because they don't last long.
Now, geum is a plant that really does benefit from a good pruning, a good deadheading. So it'll often produce these lovely orange flowers that sprout up from the base of the plant. The flowers on this particular plant here are all spent, so they need cutting back. So I pruned back my geum that lives on the patio just behind me over there, and it's already sent out some replacement flowers, so they're ready to open up. So what you do with this guy, like I say, the flower spikes will come all the way from the base. So to make it nice and tidy, try and go as near to the base as possible and cut the whole thing out like so. So there's a couple here. There's that one. There we go.
This is Erigeron, and it's a low-growing perennial that has these dainty, very, very pretty white daisy-like flowers, and they turn to pink as they mature through the summer. As you can see, it's looking a bit of a straggly mess, so I'm going to cut it right back and we might get a second flush of flowers, but if not, it's just going to look a lot tidier. So not being too delicate around this, just going to give it a really good snip back in bunches. Get rid of all those dead heads. And that's it.
Now sometimes you'll come to a plant and you'll find that some flowers are still thriving whilst some are spent. And you might want to go through and pick out the spent ones to save the ones that are still on the plant. But really, most of the time, it's better just to cut the whole lot down and just start afresh. And that'll give the plant an opportunity to put all its energy into producing new flowers for that season, hopefully. So I've got this Astrantia here, beautiful plant, one of my favourites in the garden. So I'm going to go through. It flowers from the base, so I'm going to cut them out right at the base. Now I wasn't too worried about if there were, good flowers still on there. I just cut the whole lot off. And you can as well just go through and trim back some of the leaves on the outer, on the perimeter, because they're looking a bit yellow and brown. So I'm just going to go through, give it a tidy up. So I've cut quite a lot off, so now the plant is probably in panic mode, and that's good, that's a good thing. It's going to send out more leaves and hopefully more flowers before the end of the season.
Regular viewers to the channel will know that pelargoniums or geraniums are one of my absolute favourite plants. And what I love about them is they will bloom right through from May to autumn, but only if you deadhead them. So it's really important that you keep on top of deadheading. And there's a couple of ways we can do this. You can see they grow in these like clusters of flowers, and some of the flowers will begin to turn brown. I mean, these have gone over quite a bit. So we can just pick them off really with our fingers like that. It's very easy, and then you can kind of leave the rest of the head on there. The other way of deadheading is getting the whole head and then following it down, or the whole cluster, following the stem right down to the base, and then you just snap it off like that. I'll just carry on snapping that's very much spent. You can see hiding under some of these big clusters. We've got these clusters ready to come into flower. So I think that's all the heads I'm going to remove. While I'm here, I'm going to take off any leaves that are looking a bit brown on the edges or yellow. That's looking a lot better. I've got a A few more to do on here.
This is the Santelina, which is an evergreen shrub. We got it in a pot. And it's a nice dome-shaped plant with lots of delicate little yellow flowers that come through middle of summer. So, as you can see with this guy, he's got himself into a bit of a mischief. He's chasing the sun over there and he's got a bit leggy in doing so, and he's all facing that way. So what I think we need to do is to cut him right back. So he's not really known for repeat blooming, so we don't need to worry too much about the flowers. There's lots of dead flowers on here, but there are some still yellow ones, but we're not going to worry too much about that. We're going to set it up for success for next year, essentially. So I'm more of the heavy metal style of pruning, whereas Mr. Sheffield is more the kind of jazz style, a bit more delicate. So I like to get stuck in there and cut away. Now when you're cutting the foliage of this plant, you don't want to go too far down, cut into the really woody plants, woody part. Similar to lavender in that way. So you want to stop short of going too far down, but I'm going to go through and give it a good cut back to stop it being leggy.
This is Nepeta or catmint. In May earlier in the year, I gave it what's called the Chelsea chop, and all that is a method of pruning where you take it back by about a third. That encourages more flowers and also stops it flopping over, because it has a tendency to kind of flop out in the middle. This is quite a new plant, so it probably wouldn't do it too much in the first year, but the older it is, the bigger it will get and the more it will do that. And it's worked really well. We'd had a second flush of flowers. As you can see, it's nice and compact. It's not flopping all over the place. So now it's just a case of deadheading it and keeping on top. So I'm just gonna give it a little deadhead to tidy it up. We don't need to be too precise about it. There we go, just a nice little haircut.
So, hostas, every gardener's favourite, right? Or should I say every slug's favourite? I'm surprised these haven't got attacked by slugs so far this year. Maybe it's because they're in pots. These have all got flowers, and as you can see, they're looking past their best. But even when they're in their prime, they don't really amount to that much. Which is why gardeners prune the flowers off as soon as they start appearing. Because if you leave them on, then they tend to take energy away from the plant and it producing nice foliage, which is why if you let your hosta go to flower, then the leaves thereafter tend to be a bit meh. That's what's happening to this guy in particular. All the leaves have gone a bit yellow and a bit crispy brown, which is not what you want from a hosta. You want them to stay nice and vibrant, so you sacrifice the flowers. So we should have done this earlier, but I'm doing it now that they're spent. Okay, I might just cut away a couple of these leaves actually, just because they are looking a bit weathered. But maybe a caterpillar's got onto that. There's another brown one. If summer has left your plants dry and thirsty and you're not sure on the best ways to water your plants during a heat wave, then make sure you're watching this video next and we'll see you there.